Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Today we're talking about Slow Horses, the Gary Oldman-led Apple TV series that recently concluded its 5th season. And my guest is production designer Choi Ho-man. Hi, Choi. Welcome to Below the Line.
Hi, Skid. Thank you for having me on.
Super excited to have you. Also joining me as co-host today is Gianni Damaia. Gianni, nice to see you again.
I'm back. They said I wouldn't be, but here I am.
Well, glad to have you both on the show. Warning for listeners, today's conversation will contain spoilers. Choi, you've been on the show since the beginning. Tell us about your history with the show, how things started out leading up to season 5.
It was back in 2020. I'd been invited to meet Tom Burton, the then designer for season 1 and season 2. We kind of hit it off, I suppose, and he offered me the job. So I kind of came in as the supervising art director. And then a couple of weeks later, of course, we shut down for COVID. Everybody was sent home with their laptops and their computer. It was a strange time because we'd only had a couple of weeks on the show. And then we kind of went home and worked remotely on something which we weren't quite sure about and what was going on and how we were going to do it. And there was this massive uncertainty as well. So I supervised season 1 and 2 with Tom, and Tom designed the kind of standing stock sets that we see, Slough House and the Hub. And I ran it as his supervising art director with a bunch of us kind of take it in turns to leapfrog.
And as I understand it, at least so far, Apple has commissioned 2 seasons in a row. In other words, you talked about that was seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then it came back. They said, well, we're going to do seasons 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. And so what was it like going from 1 and 2 to 3 and 4? Like any sort of changes, or once Apple really made a commitment to the show?
Well, so 1 and 2, I mean, I remember when we started, we talked about, we kind of vaguely touched on the fact that it was like 1 story, 1 book, 6 eps, and then a little break, and then another story, another book. I don't know if you've done any episodic TV, you kind of think, well, surely it makes sense to kind of do all of the Slough House for the whole 12 books. But
right.
we couldn't really think of it that way because it's such a big story to do that as we went in, we just said, right, let's just concentrate on the first one. We'll get that one done and then we'll deal with the next one when it comes up. So we didn't really have a master plan at that point. But when we went into season 3 and 4, we were aware of it, but we kind of got ourselves into a routine and a rhythm to make that work with the 2 separate directors, with a little bit of an overlap between the 2 teams. The shoot crew was the same all the way through, and we kind of made it work.
And if I understand correctly, you have a single director for all 6 episodes. In other words, it's like you're shooting a 6-hour movie, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. And that team, my art department, carries on the whole way through for the 2 books.
Choi, just to get specific about the actual timeline, because you had said it's a very quick turnaround in between, 2 seasons at a time. Is it like you shoot 1 season over the course of, just throwing out a number, like 3 months, and then you get 1 month off and then another 3 months? Or what's the turnaround time exactly like?
So it was around about 98 days, 100 days shoot. So it was quite long. And then we'd have a 6-week crew hiatus before we started the next one. But of course, pre-production for the next one adds another thing to that. So you're kind of driving ridiculous distances to kind of sign sets off and start people off. At the same time, you're then going to a location recce for the next story and trying to kind of get your head into that one. But it's possible. It can work. It's tight, but it can work.
So is there anything particular about season 5 and 6? 5 has just aired. You've already done the filming for 6. Anything different about these seasons over the first 4?
Well, I guess season 5 was a kind of the same team as season 3. So Saul Metzstein was the director and Danny Cohn was the DOP. And it's just such a pleasure once you've been through it, and you all get back together and you go, well, it's the same kind of thing, but we could do it slightly differently. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So that's quite good to be able to feel like you're collaborating in that kind of way. And Will, the showrunner, is just he's such a pleasure to be with and to work with, and he's so collaborative too. So you always felt like it was a big kind of, you were all part of a big rolling project.
So, Joy, taking a step back from filming, how important are the actual books to your work in production design?
I try to read the book if I get time, but I don't refer to it too much because I think it's great for getting a sense of the character. But for the sense of place, I think you've got to see what you're offered with the locations, and then you've got to kind of build that world in between where there are big gaps. So for me, I take my lead from the director and from Will and his sense, because he was so immersed in the entire, the whole story from start to finish.
Right.
And very close to Mick. So, there was a lot of kind of support that came from that direction.
Season 4 obviously ends on a pretty climatic note, basically like taking apart probably one of your babies, I would imagine. It's kind of like destroying Slough House almost. It's like a huge climatic shootout, really, really chaotic. And then we pick up shortly thereafter, and some of that calamity that they're dealing with is still in place. Is that a difficult process for you in terms of, taking apart something that you built and then trying to figure out where it gets patched back together? How involved is the showrunner in that? Could you talk us through just some of those things?
So the shootout was quite bloody and quite gory and very destructive at the end of season 4. And, when we came to be thinking about the next story, we knew that there was going to be quite a lot played in Slough House, especially in that room where they're all locked down in Lamb's office, and there's that exchange between all of them in and outside those rooms. So in a way, it was quite good that the partitions have been shot out, because it gave us an opportunity to say, well, the building is feeling the tremors of this event, and it's probably got PSTD, so we've got to kind of be careful with this building. But actually, what would the management do? They would come back and make it safe and modernize it slightly within the limited budget that they're going to give to the Slow Horses and Slough House. And so it just made sense to then really contrast that very kind of dilapidated, that lovely environment, which, yes, it's part of the history of the show, but I'm not. I just think if you're going to destroy a set, that's great. Let's get it. Let's change it. I'm really up for that. So when we kind of came to it, we were wrecking around the place, and I kept pointing things out to Saul, saying, look, there's building works there. What do you think of that? I'm going to do some hazard tape up the corners of the walls and some bits of plywood, and, all of those massive health and safety signs that you just get everywhere plastered over everything. It gave us an opportunity to introduce something really different. We kind of said, well, what would happen in reality is the guys would move in, they would put all the protective stuff down or not, however they choose to do it. They put the signage up, they'd put their hard hats in, and then they would probably go for breakfast and you wouldn't see them again. That's kind of where we kind of landed it, really. And that just kind of seemed to fit with what we wanted to do with it.
You had talked earlier about sort of reflecting the characters and some of the production design work. Would you say that Slough House is like the sort of best example in season 5 of how you're kind of commenting on maybe the PTSD that they're feeling?
I think, it's a great set, and it kind of it doesn't stop surprising, and we were talking about how is Lamb going to go to the bog, as he would call it, which is behind his desk. We kind of said, well, we need another one somewhere else in the building. Where are we going to put it? Let's build another bathroom somewhere. And so we go for the journey past all the ladders and the equipment, and then he moves the ladder, and then you get the shot through the ladder. It was all quite fun to kind of like make that feel like it had always been there, but it gave that sense of journey. Sorry, I don't know if that really answers the question. But...
No, I thought it was a beautiful answer. Just a strictly logistical question, though. So Slough House, that's all one set. It's all merged together, or is it separate sets that you've built?
So when we first started in season 1 and 2, we didn't quite have the stage space to build more than 2. No, we could build 3 floors, but we couldn't get hose office underneath that, because in reality it would be underneath that, but up from the ground floor. So we always had hose set as a separate build. And to be honest, the sets come up and down because of logistics and stuff, although they're not really designed to go up and down, but we do put them up and down. But yeah, so Slough House kind of is the stairway up to the main, where you see the lift, derelict lift, and then you've got River's office, the kitchen, and Shirley and Marcus, then Co. And so that's the one floor. And then above that, you've got Lamb's office and the landing and Standish's office, which we don't really see very much of. It's just there as a backing.
Now, talking about recurring sets, also tell us a little bit about your thinking with Regent's Park, the MI5 headquarters, because that's been in every season, but we're seeing different parts of it. How do you approach the new things you introduce?
If I think back, that's kind of one of the interesting things, isn't it? Because you don't know where it's going to go. So at the beginning, you design it, and Tom put the main elements together. And as we went on through the seasons, it became sometimes it's tricky to go back to the same car park to shoot a car park sequence. And so we ended up shooting another car park, for that particular car park and having to redress it so it's a little bit more, and then corridors, etc., walkways, atriums where people jump up and down in previous seasons. There's all of that going on. Also, we had Tierney's office, which was something which was in season 3, which we hadn't ever seen before. I hadn't seen anything to do with the outside of the park, really. We had a little bit of the back gate, but nothing more than that. And so it's about suddenly you've got to kind of map this thing out in a real place and kind of imagine what it would really be. And where would the execs be? Where would the first desk have their office? And because the hub is sort of kind of played as if it's in the lower bowels of the building, I kind of thought, well, okay, let's pitch this as an idea. Do you think she's got the best view? Because we knew that at some point in the future, Taverner was really coveting getting her job, getting the first desk job. And it needed something to kind of top Tom's or, match Tom's brilliant set with the ceiling and the balcony and the glass everywhere. And so I just said, right, that's it. She's got to be on the 5th or 6th floor with the view and a balcony and a big picture window looking out. That's kind of what we did for that. And it's about keeping it in the same language, but not being too constrained by that. But I don't know, it's fun. I like doing that kind of thing. It's, it's a real challenge.
Commenting on that, just specifically about, Taverner and her arc throughout the season basically being for her to get to the role that she claims that she never actually applied for. This season, if I'm correct in remembering, also features a scene in Taverner's house that sort of focuses on her kitchen and stuff. And it feels very modern in the same way that the new office feels. Is that a conscious decision that you want those two things to sort of reflect each other to comment on where that arc is going? Or is that just something that's just a byproduct of Taverner likes nice things?
No, I think we made a very conscious decision. We were invited in to see a lovely property, and we kind of went in, we all took our boots off and we carefully made sure we didn't touch any of the walls because it was so precious. But it was so kind of right for her because it was very stripped back. It was everything was in its place. And she's a woman living on her own, but she's got money, but she's that stripped back character. She's very kind of, and it just was quite good to have a real contrast of an environment, because you end up going to lots of terraced houses in London because London's full of terraced houses, and you want to make them look different. So it was good to do something really, really different, I think.
Now, going back to Regent's Park, another set that was new this season was that cell number 8 where they held Ho. The interrogation room was sort of a trope of television, but this room was really different, but not so different that it was distracting. Talk to me more about this specific set and what you were trying to accomplish with it.
I think we'd already got an interrogation suite, which we've seen a couple of times. And it was just, how do we make his particular space a little darker, a little deeper in the bowels of the building, a little bit more hidden away, not part of the main body of what's actually going on and what really does happen down there. We put a sluice in there to make it look like there were probably, very nasty things going on down there. If you're going to be honest to realism, then you've got to put in, it would be breeze block, it would be a square room, it would be very functional, there'd be it'd be nothing to kind of damage yourself or hurt others with. But this felt like it was an opportunity to have people looking down at him trying to get their attention by, acting up to the window. And we've been on a recce through the estate where Ho lives. So we were searching for how we were trying to plan the whole sequence where Ho comes home and all of that and all the exterior stuff. And we walked through the car park through a couple of doors in this housing estate, and we went through a kind of lobby which had an open air, a big well, a big concrete well, a bit like if you were looking over into a squash court. And I just thought, that's kind of cool. I'll just note that, stick it in my back pocket. And then when we came to thinking about the cell and we got into it a bit more, I kind of said, well, I've got some ideas, and I think it should be a bit like this, like a bit of recommissioned car park, which they've just blocked off. And there's a layer between 1 and 2, and they put a window in, and they've kind of fudged it together, but it's the kind of place that nobody really knows about. And it's really deep in the building. So that's how that all evolved.
It makes perfect sense too, because when you consider like that in Slough House, Ho is buried away in the basement. It's kind of the same thing. No matter where he's at, they're always going to try to make sure that we don't want anybody really knowing he's here.
Well, I want to talk more about that Ho character because this is really his, I don't want to say breakout season, but he gets a lot of focus on this.
You know, as we go through the seasons, his character is the one that changes quite a lot in terms of he's trying on different identities every season. It's a new Ho. And I think the first time you meet him, when he takes Lamb out to his car to get into his car in season, is it season 3? It's the first time we see the Roadster, the blue car that he drives. You know, then you start to get an inkling of what this character might be, but you're not sure. And so it was really fun to develop his identity, to try and see where, you know, and it's often led by what they're going to do with his hair and his costume. Because, you know, obviously they develop that side quite early, and then we kind of respond to that a little bit by saying, well, okay, he lives in this estate and we know what that flat would be like inside, but it's what kind of guy is he? He's an all-night gamer. He can't stop. He's just obsessed with the dark web, I guess. I don't really know, but you know, and so, you know, that was a really cool set to do.
And you even threw in a waterbed.
We even threw in a waterbed. And I think it was really difficult to get a waterbed, but it was a circular waterbed, and that was good fun, making the sword and all of that, and putting the, you know, all the lights around the room.
I assume I know the answer, but just to at least frame it from my mind, the set outside, because there's a pretty elaborate chase scene that happens. There's also the sort of stairwell scene outside of Ho's apartment. These are different sets, presumably, from the actual apartment itself.
Yeah. I mean, practically speaking, we were on that location shooting the exterior night sequences 5 nights, I think. And that's about the limit that you can actually manage in London, because you just piss everybody off so much. And, you know, to get all of that sequence underway, we had to build it, really. There wasn't, you know, we didn't have a choice. There was a lot to kind of think about with the falling over the balcony and how we were going to stage that, because we wanted to do a top shot of, you know, the guy falling down onto the lower balcony. So in the end, it just made sense to build it.
Just speaking of this chase scene specifically, it also has or leads up to one of my favorite fight scenes in the show, which is the sort of one-on-one fight. I think it's between Shirley and the only way I know how to identify the guy is the superhuman, but it's in that sort of like skate rink. Was that a set you guys built, or was that one you found?
No, that's a skate park in West London under the Westway.
What a great set piece, though.
Yeah, it's great. And when you're actually there, it's one of those ones that's directly next to the tube lines, and it's so noisy. So you're deafened by being in this concrete kind of like underpass, and it's brilliant. So atmospheric.
Yeah.
Ho's flat's an example, but I think you had a lot of sets this season where very clearly establishing a location exterior, but then we've got a lot of stuff going on inside. Talk to us some about the challenges of stitching things together.
It's partly circumstantial, isn't it? Because you go to a place, there's quite a long sequence where you've got to go in at the front and mingle around a little bit, and then go through some corridors, go through a room, climb out of a window and through a scaffold, and then something else has got to happen. So that's quite a long sequence to try and put together. And of course, you know, you find the front half of the building, that's all well and good, but then by the time you get into the dressing room, you kind of, okay, so now he's got to climb out the window. We can't build scaffolding outside that window. And the scaffolding needs to be on a location where we can actually shoot them on the ground outside the back of the building. How are we going to do this? So, the locations team worked really hard to kind of give us some options to try and give us those bookends. And then we have to kind of create everything in the middle. And so, we built the dressing room as a set, but we came in at the front, for instance, at the Gimbal rally, which is the one with all the flags and Union Jacks. We had Conway Hall, which is a very lovely place in central London with a meeting hall and a gallery around it, and the boxes either side of the stage. And then it had some lovely corridors, and it had the great dressing room, but it didn't have anything outside the window in the dressing room. So basically we lifted the dressing room. We just copied it verbatim, like for like, built that on the stage, and then the team found a cheap window on eBay, which was just like lift it in and put it in, one of the old metal crystal windows. So that gave that interface legitimacy and reality. And then we built the scaffold outside, and that was all on the deck. There wasn't anything, that wasn't any on a platform or anything. But then we had to actually get inside the scaffolding rig to do all those sequences with the pots and buckets and stuff.
Speaking of the pots and buckets and stuff, I'm just always curious about at what point one team stops and another team begins, because obviously this whole sequence culminates in the paint bucket falling through this elaborate domino effect and then hitting its gimbal right in the head and killing him.
Yeah.
At what point do you guys, as the production design team, say, okay, stunt team, you're taking over? Or do you guys also help and assist them in figuring out how this pulley rig is going to work and then how it's going to
definitely. I mean, we're very old school, and we just say, can we all get together? Can we just meet you? Can we just talk to you? Special effects, we want to talk to you. Okay, can we do this? Can we do that? What if we do that? I've done a couple of these sequences before on previous jobs where you've got to have something that sets something off, and then it all, the final thing is that it's da-da, the chocolate's made, or da-da, something's happened. So putting that sequence together, I realised, and chatting to Saul about what, how many beats he needed and what we're going to do, I kind of quite quickly put a sketch together, which I then take to the special effects, and we stand there and we talk about it, and we, and they say, well, we can do this, we can do that, but we can't do that. Okay, fine. So, and then it goes back to the drawing board a bit, and then we eventually get it stood up, and they do a rehearsal, and it's based loosely on what I'm suggesting, but it's always a bit of a challenge, because you kind of get, well, okay, Choi, if you just draw it up, that would be fine, and then let us know when you've done it, kind of thing. So we don't, no, it's not really very many people involved in that sort of preliminary process. But the special effects team are great, and they've got bags of experience. I've known them for years, and they came up with some brilliant ideas themselves, but all loosely sort of, based around the original sketch idea. So that's how it kind of works, really.
Well, yeah, I think it's a testament to why Slow Horses just works so well in general. Is it sounds like it's just that collaboration of all those different units being able to talk that old school style. It just doesn't really exist a whole lot in television today. So kudos to you guys.
I think it's quite easy just to get buried in the WhatsApps and the emails and the texts, isn't it? And you kind of go, hang on a minute, I don't even know what this email is. It's like, I don't know what are we talking about. So yeah, I mean, it's always best just to meet face to face with a model, basically, or a sketch. It's the only way to do it, really, I think.
Another set where it seems to me, Joy, that you probably stitched things together was at Abbotsfield, where we opened with the shooting, and then we go back there for a rally later in the season. What was that set like?
So Locations had found a couple of shopping precincts just outside London that we went to visit. And Saul had a very particular idea in his mind of what he wanted it to be. So we managed to find somewhere that was going to serve the dynamics of what we wanted to shoot. And then it was a case of building out from there to try and make the other, because obviously it runs through the whole story, and you've got the guy's apartment at the beginning. I can't remember his name. Robert Winters, maybe? Is it Robert Winters?
That does, yeah, sound familiar.
So Robert Winters' flat would have been in that precinct somewhere overlooking that square. And so we did all the exteriors of that place, shot the POVs from there, etc. But we were kind of struggling with the interior element. It was originally written as when Taverner finds out that something's going to happen, she's in the hub, isn't she? And she says, oh, it's going to be a multi-faith centre. It was originally written as a church, but in this day and age in London, we just thought actually it should be more like a community centre or something more open to all people. So we were searching for, interesting brutalist kind of interiors that we could shoot. And they're either very, very high end or they're very, very run down. But we knew of this school in North London that has this hall, like a school hall with a gymnasium in it. And it's an octagonal shape. And it's quite interesting from that top shot. And so we then worked to create how that would link with the shopping centre, with the kind of the architecture in between and the sequence in the tower. We worked out how we want to stage all of that, because obviously getting people up a tower to shoot, you can do it, but you've got to find a tower, and there wasn't a tower that was in the right place. So again, we had to composite all of that. So the multi-phase centre had a little bit of an exterior where you see them walk into the bottom of the tower, and then you see Fly enter the tower at the bottom, and then at the top she finds the bullet casing kind of placed. That was a set build. So we built the top and the bottom, and then, the VFX very cleverly stitched it all together and made it work. That's I think that's probably a bit unusual for telly, isn't it? I mean, maybe I've been sheltered all these years, but we didn't used to do that on TV shows.
No, definitely, and especially not on the turnaround times that you guys have. I know I keep gushing about the turnaround times, but it just is really impressive what you guys are able to do within, this short span of time, just running and gunning.
Yeah, we're lucky. We've got some great people that work in our teams. They're just, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
What are some of your other favorite sets from season 5?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I quite liked all the additional sets that we did for the hub. We didn't actually go out on location. We got to a point with the schedule where, it wasn't kind of working. And once we've shot out Tierney's office, Taverner's office, Whelan's office, whatever it is, whoever it is, we always take it down and store it and then put another set in its place. So actually we've got a lot of kind of scenery kind of hanging around, which is in a modular form, and you can kind of just reconfigure it. So we put together a lift lobby, and you can see the atrium bridge at the back when Taverner and Whelan are walking and talking and they get in the lift. And she does that brilliant kind of look, that withering look of like, oh my God. Those kind of things are my favourite. So and we actually built the car park set this time as well, because we couldn't go back to the car park that we've used in previous seasons. And if you look at a stage, it's a big black cavernous space, a bit like a car park. As long as if you could get a bit of lighting in and a bit of a canopy in and a little bit of road marking, you're kind of away really. So that's what we did, and that was a case of reconfiguring bits of lift, bits of concrete, etc. They're kind of some of my favourite sets, just that kind of just remaking and reusing what you've got and then working out what extra you've got to add in. The other one that I quite like is the outdoor gym that River is doing his kind of press ups at when Co comes to find him.
Right.
That didn't exist in that spot, so we built that one. Yeah, in cool. A week. Oh, we haven't got. Wow, we can't find a location. Okay, right. Okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, but that was fun. That was really fun. That one.
And so did you build it near something else, as far as is it the efficiency of shooting that has you building it somewhere rather than trying to find something?
I think for Saul, it was the skyscrapers in the background and the concrete kind of railway bridge that was beside it, and then the old Victorian railway bridge. That kind of, he's got a very architectural eye. So that for him was where he wanted to shoot it. So rather than go to a place and see if we can find that background, we find the background and then we put the scenery in. But yes, that would have been shot at the end of the day of like a few other locations in that area of Bethnal Green, which was where we were that day. I can't remember exactly what we were shooting, but when you're out on the road, you're like three sets a day, 3 locations a day, move, switch over. It's pretty busy.
There's a set very early on that punctuates a really funny visual joke that I did want to ask about, and it's the one that random, very fancy sort of restaurant that they go to. Ho ends up tipping like 10 or $20, obviously not dollars, but so that they can quote get any table they want. And then of course the shot pans out and it's every table is empty. I was just wondering if that was a set that you guys built or if you just found that restaurant, just rented it out because it's such a funny joke.
We'd recce'd quite a few of those skyline restaurants in the city. They're all quite difficult to get hold of at night. And we also wanted, there was the brief was to journey in a lift up, journey in a lift down restaurant. And they've all got to be in this, So because it's quite a long sequence, again, it's not just like we're in there as a two-hander and then we're off, which you could do if you shut down a restaurant for 5 hours. You could do that easily. But this kind of comes and goes and there's a lot of back and forth, etc. So we actually did build that on stage, and we built the lift as well, which is with all that light. That was really fun too. That was really good fun. Were you fooled? Did you think it was real?
I did. I really did.
Planning to make a reservation next time you're in London.
Yeah. I was prepared for it to be a really lame question because I thought you were going to be like, oh yeah, we just found that restaurant. And I'd be like, damn.
No, actually, we've been to lots of these, obviously, quite fancy restaurants in town. We reckoned them all. And then we just said, right, we like the floor in that one. We like the ceiling in that one. We like the view out of that one. We're not sure about the lift, but let's do that. So then you can design it for the journey that you want to make, sequence that you want to shoot. So that was a really nice one to do.
I love that idea of just the patchwork and set creation. That's a lot of fun and a lot of freedom, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was.
When we're talking about character arcs and sort of development over the seasons, talk to us about the Gary Oldman character and what influence he personally might have in doing production design for the things that he's affected, or what you're thinking about, going from story to story with him.
I think he's a very stable character, shall we say, and you don't really know anything about his personal life. And even when we tried to do a little bit of what's Gary's own home, what's Lamb's home? Can we find him in his own home? What would that be like? That eventually didn't really have much of an impact because you've got to create such a big story for that. So really, the good thing about it is he's very stable in that environment, and it kind of just works very, very well. It's almost like if he didn't have to get up to go to the toilet, he wouldn't get up to go to the toilet. It's that close. Everything's within like arm's reach. And it's all about what's going on in here, not what's around him. So
audience, Choi gestured at her head there. What's going on in here in his brain? So, since we're not doing the visual, we have to spell that out for people.
About what's going on in his head.
Joy, what can you tease us about season 6? Now, we're not going to do spoilers, but for production design, other challenges or things we can look forward to when the new season drops?
What can I say? I don't want to say anything really. It's going to be interesting to see how you all react to it.
What a tease.
Okay, all right.
That was like the most interesting answer you could have possibly given, I think. That was
Well, and going out past that, I read that Apple TV has already greenlit season 7. What do you know about the future of the series?
I know they are planning 7 and 8, but I'm not involved anymore. I decided to stop because, it's a pretty relentless schedule, and I've been attached to the same show and it's brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I read everything that I can, every snippets that comes up on the, anywhere out there. But it's 4 years of my life, which has just been, and as much as I love it, I just needed a break from it. It was just kind of getting to a natural end for me. So, yeah.
Well, we are going to see your work on season 6 when it drops. I don't know the exact dates, but sometime in 2026. Beyond Slow Horses, then where else are we going to see your work?
Well, I'd love to know where you're going to see. I don't know about you guys, but there's not much going on around here at the moment. So I'm kind of taking it easy, using the downtime to just regroup and do all those things that you don't do when you're so busy and committed. So it's good to have a bit of time off and not be too worried.
Especially after the crazy schedule that that you just endured. So yeah, definitely enjoy a lengthy vacation, but I'm sure you'll be back sooner than you might hope, but definitely soon enough for us to be excited about it.
Thank you.
Well, very excited also again that you joined us today, these insights on season 5 and not telling us much about season 6, but of course we're watching for that as well. On that note, we'll call it a wrap. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Choi.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And that is a probable wrap on season 25 of the podcast. It's possible we'll release a bonus episode or two at the start of the new year, but most likely you'll next hear from Below the Line, where we kick off our 7th annual Oscar series at the end of January. As regular listeners are aware, each of those episodes will feature film professionals discussing the Academy nominees in their category of expertise. It's a lot of episodes in a short time frame, but it's a fun challenge for me, and I hope an enjoyable listen for you. At the very least, it sets you up to sound super smart at your Oscar party. As always, I appreciate your feedback. My email address is skid@belowtheline, one word, .biz. That's B-I-Z. If you're new to the podcast, you should check out our archives, where there are more than 275 past episodes for your listening enjoyment. You can peruse those on our website, belowtheline.biz, or wherever you get your podcasts. Closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music, John Wan for our logo, and to all of our listeners, I appreciate you. If you want to support us, consider a purchase. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Other ways you can help. First, give us a positive rating wherever you get your podcasts. Second, tell your friends about an episode you enjoyed, because that's how we gain new listeners. All of that aside, whatever your engagement, the fact that you're still listening means a lot to me. Thanks again from Below the Line.